So tonight, our lesson is very relevant and timely because of the times that we're living in. Of course, you probably could say that about almost any time, but it just seems like, I don't know, we're facing a lot of challenges these days. And Christianity is being attacked. Our God creator is being attacked. Family, all of those things are just being, seems to be just under a lot of pressure. And things are, for some, it's been falling apart. I don't know if y'all know, but May 1st is an election for, I don't know how it's worded, but it's to count Lubbock as a sanctuary city against abortion.
I've heard of it, but I didn't know there was much of it.
Yes. So they went before the council, the city council, and the city council, y'all may remember we signed some petitions here in the building. They had enough registered legal petitions for it to go, if the city council didn't act on it, to go before the people as a vote. So that vote is going to be on May 1st. So here's your opportunity to stand up for and against abortion. And that's going to be on May 1st. You have to be registered by April 1st. So you have a little bit of time if you're not registered, but probably maybe most of it are. Anyway, just thought that would be appropriate to throw out there for tonight's lesson. So we're going to be in Daniel. We're going to do a lot of reading. So y'all take your mask off and get ready to read, because I don't think I can read it all. But we're going to be doing a lot of reading. So Judah had been unfaithful, worshiping idols, just in a lot of trouble, forsaking God. And so God sent Babylon to Jerusalem to take the city and take captives. And that's where we are in tonight's lesson. And Babylon was it was a center for commerce, for education, for the arts, for music, for all the fine things of life, and the things that worldly people are attracted to, all those things. So it was known for that. And it's even thought, I didn't really look this up, but it was in the book I was reading, that it may have been the place for one of the 7 wonders of the world, the Hanging Gardens. So obviously it was a very lush and beautiful place along the way. So this is where it begins. But first I wanted us to see how the Bible described Babylon. That's the worldly view of Babylon. So turn to Isaiah 13 and someone read 19 and 20. And just back it up from Daniel, a few pages. You got it?
Babylon will be destroyed like the time God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. Babylon is the most beautiful of all kingdoms. The Babylonians are very proud of their city, but Babylon will not continue to be beautiful. People will not continue to live there in the future. Arabs will not put their tents there. Shepherds will not bring their sheep to let them eat there.
Okay, so it's a very beautiful place, and during the time of Daniel it is, but it's a very wicked place, and God is going to destroy it. And it's actually in today Iraq, if you know where Iraq is in the Middle East, it's about 60 miles from where Baghdad is located today. So no one lives there now. It's not a place that is lived in. Okay, real quickly turn to Jeremiah 50 verse 2, and what does that say?
Announce and proclaim among the nations, lift up a banner and proclaim and keep nothing back. Say, Babylon will be captured, but Bel will be put to shame, Marduk filled with terror. Our images will be put to shame and our idols filled with terror.
Okay, so it's going to be destroyed, the idols can't save it. You know, that's what the people thought, is that the idols will be able to save them. But God says, no, that definitely is not gonna happen. So Babylon is going to be destroyed eventually. Okay, so now let's, we're going to look at, I put this question in there and I'm not sure if it belonged here or somewhere else, but I couldn't decide where else to put it, so I just left it. Why do you think God allowed idol worshiping nations to conquer his own people?
Well, it was all about his people disobeying him, and let other people conquer them just because he wanted to prove something to them. He wanted to punish
He
his
wanted them to understand about following him. Anything else? They were actually lusting after the nations around them. They wanted to be like them, with the king and with their way of life. So that's one of the things that God gets very angry. He's a jealous God, right? But not all of the Judah had forgotten God and his law, and that's what we are going to see. So let's read Daniel, jump over to Daniel. We're going to be there the rest of the time. Somebody read Daniel 1-7.
In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and he besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand with some of the articles of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinir, to the house of his God, and he brought the articles into the treasure house of his God. Then the king instructed Ashpenaz, the master of the eunuchs, to bring some of the children of Israel, and some of the king's descendants, and some of the nobles, the nobles, young men in whom there was no blemish, but good-looking, gifted in all wisdom, possessing knowledge, and quick to understand, who had the ability to serve in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the language and literature of the Chaldeans. And the king appointed for them a daily provision of the king's delicacies and of the wine which he drank, and the 3 years of training for them, so that at the end of that time they might serve before the king. Now, from among those of the sons of Judah were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. To them the chief of the eunuchs gave names. He gave Daniel the name Belteshazzar, to Hananiah, Shadrach, and to Mishael, Meshach, and to Azariah, Abednego.
Okay, so there's the beginning. Who and what did King Nebuchadnezzar take from Jerusalem?
He took some of the stuff from the temple.
He took some of the things from the temple to put in his place of idol worship. That did not go well with God. And who else did he ask?
He wanted the boys from the royal families. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
The
Royal.
important Judean royal family.
Yeah.
He wants the important kids.
And he wanted them to look good. And he wanted them to be learned. What else?
Smart.
Smart, yeah. And he wanted them to be competent, you know, have that, success about them. I wonder how he found out that. I don't know. I mean, they just conquered the city, so I'm sure lots of people were killed in the raid, but those of, I think God probably had something to do with that along the way. In fact, we're going to see God's hand in this all along the way, actually. Okay, why do you think they changed their names? And what were they taught?
They changed the names probably because they were Hebrew names and they probably didn't wanted them to follow Nebuchadnezzar instead of following.
Mhm. And what were they gonna be taught? Yeah, the language, the culture, the literature of Babylon.
Maybe changing their names kind of was a way to strip them of their identity,
I
to
think,
start all over.
yes, I think that it was. It had to do with forget your heritage, forget who you were, forget where you came from, because we're gonna train you in the way of our culture. Do we see any of that today? That's what I found so interesting in all of this reading, is because it seems so timely for what we're experiencing into our world today. They wanted to change how the people that they brought back to Babylon, they wanted to change how they felt and what they believed in. So that was the beginning. Hey, so, if someone could read 8 through 20, 8 to the end of the chapter.
But Daniel resolved not to defile himself with royal food and wine, and he asked the chief official for permission not to defile himself this way. Now that had caused the official to show favor and compassion to Daniel. But the official told Daniel, I am afraid of my lord the king, who has assigned your food and drink. Why should he see you looking worse than the other young men your age? The king would then have my head because of you. Daniel then said to the guard, whom the chief official had appointed over Daniel, Hannah, Mishael, and Azariah, please test your servants for 10 days. Give us nothing but vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then compare our appearance with that of the young men who eat the royal food, and treat your servants in accordance with what you see. So he agreed to this and tested them for 10 days. At the end of the 10 days, they looked healthier and better nourished than any of the young men who ate the royal food. So the guard took away their choice food and the wine they were to drink and gave them vegetables instead. To these 4 young men, God gave knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning. And Daniel could understand visions and dreams of all kinds. At the end of the time set by the king to bring them into his service, the chief official presented them to Nebuchadnezzar. The king talked with them, and he found none equal to Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So they entered the king's service. In every matter of wisdom and understanding, about which the king questioned them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters in his whole kingdom. And Daniel remained there until the 1st year of King Cyrus.
Okay. So we're going to see as we go through these chapters, Daniel serves several kings, not just one king. So that's one thing. So what did Daniel ask, and how did he persuade this official to follow his plan?
He told him, just give us a test. He asked for vegetables.
Yeah. And why did he ask for the vegetables?
Well, probably they were serving meat they shouldn't have.
They probably were serving things that were forbidden for Jews.
I mean, when you look at the list of things that we can't have on meat.
I mean, it says in here, I don't want to defile myself. So he doesn't want to,
Chance it.
right. So he wanted, and he said, we'll be safe with vegetables and water. But what happened?
They were healthier.
They were. And it was the 4 Hebrews, the 4 that are named, that asked for this. And why was the chief official afraid to do it at the beginning?
because he thought they'd look worse, and he thought they'd be unhealthy, and then he thought he'd be blamed.
Did God have his hand in this too?
Oh, of course.
Oh, definitely, yeah, definitely. And what were, Daniel and his friends were setting up and staying faithful. And that's what we're gonna see throughout this whole thing, is how they remain faithful in spite of the teaching that they were being indoctrinated with, and they learned it because they were quizzed by the king, and he was very impressed with the four of them. And Daniel ended up serving the king. And the others were given positions also. Any other comments about that? How do you think they were able to stay true to God?
Made up their mind.
Okay,
They were going to do it.
they just decided, they made a decision, we're going to do this. It wasn't something that they questioned along the way.
They call it stubborn.
Sometimes we do. What else? They had each other. And that, I think, is a big deal. You know, we need each other. God made us in a way that we need the encouragement and the comrade or the friendship, the relationship of others like us. We need that. And that is the thing that helps us in our faithfulness and to encourage each other. And God had a plan. They could have been separated, but God kept them together. So they were together. Anything else?
Well, we know Daniel was a man of prayer and prayed all the time.
Yeah, we're going to read about that.
I'm sure the other ones did too.
Yeah,
Probably.
he had a window that he opened that faced Jerusalem, and he prayed 3 times a day. Even serving the king, he prayed 3 times a day. Kind of an amazing dedication, isn't it? Okay, so that's how they got started in the king's service. And they were 10 times smarter than any of the others, it said. 10 times smarter. So they really took to heart, and God was with them, their learning. Okay, now we're in chapter 2, 1 through 16.
During Nebuchadnezzar's second year as king, he had dreams. They bothered him and he could not sleep. So the king called his wise men to come to him. They used magic and watched the stars. They did this to try to interpret dreams and to learn what would happen in the future. The king wanted them to tell him what he had dreamed, so they came in and stood in front of him. Then the king said to them, I had a dream that bothers me. I want to know what it means. Then the Chaldeans answered the king. They spoke Aramaic and said, King, live forever. Please tell your dream to us, your servants, and then we will tell you what it means. Then King Nebuchadnezzar said to them, No, you must tell me the dream, and then you must tell me what it means. If you don't, I will give an order for you to be cut into pieces. Then I will order your houses to be destroyed until they are nothing but piles of dust and ashes.
He was a nice person.
He wanted to make sure that they have the power that he wanted them to tell him the dream.
Yeah.
But if you tell me my dream and explain its meaning, I will give you gifts, rewards, and great honor. So tell me about my dream and what it means. Again, the wise men said to the king, Please, sir, tell us about the dream, and we will tell you what it means. Then King Nebuchadnezzar answered, I know that you are trying to get more time. You know that I meant what I said. You know that you will be punished if you don't tell me about my dream. So you have all agreed to lie to me. You are hoping for more time so that I will forget what I want you to do. Now tell me the dream. If you can tell me the dream, I will know that you can tell me what it really means. The Chaldeans answered the king. They said, There is not a man on earth who can do what the king is asking. No king has ever asked the wise men. the men who do magic or the Chaldeans to do something like this. Not even the greatest and most powerful king has ever asked his wise men to do such a thing. The king is asking something that is too hard to do. Only the gods could tell the king his dream and what it means, but the gods don't live with people. When the king heard that, he became very angry. So he gave an order for all the wise men of Babylon to be killed. King Nebuchadnezzar's order to kill all the wise men was announced. The king's men were sent to look for Daniel and his friends to kill them. Arioch was the commander of the king's guards. He was going to kill the wise men of Babylon, but Daniel talked to him. Daniel spoke politely to Arioch and said, "Why did the king order such a severe punishment?" Then Arioch explained the whole story about the king's dreams, and Daniel understood. When Daniel heard the story, he went to King Nebuchadnezzar. Daniel asked the king to give him some more time, then he would tell the king what the dream meant.
Okay, y'all find that interesting?
I was thinking Daniel must be brave to ask for more time after the king was like, "You just want more time?"
I know. But he was asking something that they felt was impossible. It seems like Daniel wasn't there at the beginning of it and that they came after him. But what a ridiculous request that the
Yeah,
king
and
was
why was-
making.
Why was Daniel, I mean, if they were gonna persecute and, kill all the wise men,
Mhm.
was Daniel considered a wise man even though they were Hebrews?
Mhm.
I mean, I'm
Yeah.
just surprised if they would be in that class of people.
They were, because he served in the king's court. He was one of the people that Nebuchadnezzar thought a lot of. Now, I don't know that he was among those that were considered magicians and,
That's what I'm
Yeah.
thinking. I'm thinking,
but
so
evidently,
what, would he kill everybody in his court? I mean, was he gonna kill everybody?
well, he was considered among the wise, so I guess he fit into that category in that respect. Hadn't really thought about that question, Linda, but it's a good one to think about. But so they were gonna be killed. He was gonna cut them up in pieces, kill them all, destroy their houses. A very harsh punishment, just because they couldn't tell him the dream. Now, has anyone ever come to you and said,
Well,
tell
the
me
worst
what a
part-
dream was?
and the worst part is Daniel didn't even know what he was being punished for until he asked.
Right,
It's like, okay, you're all gonna die.
yeah. So why do you think Daniel asked for more time?
So he could pray to God.
Yeah. Consults God, his almighty creator, to consult him. Okay, so let's see, have we answered all the questions here? Yeah, I think we have. The wise man said, "There's not anybody living that can do what you're asking us to do." But then Daniel is going to show us that he can. So let's read 18 through 23. Or 17, I guess you better start with 17 because it kind of starts in the middle of that.
Then Daniel went to his house, and he made the decision known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah with his companions, that they might seek mercies from the God of heaven concerning the secret, so that Daniel and his companions might not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then the secret was revealed to Daniel in a night vision. So Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Daniel answered and he said, "Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. And he changes the times and the seasons. He removes the kings and he raises up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals deep and secret things. He knows what is in the darkness, and light dwells within him. I thank you and praise you, O God of my fathers. You have given me wisdom and might. You have now made known to me what we asked of you, for you have made known to us the king's demand."
Okay, so who does Daniel give credit? God revealed it to him. And he and his friends prayed and asked for this specifically. And God answers their prayer. God answers them. Then 24 through 28, I'll read that. Therefore Daniel went into Arioch, whom the king had appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said thus to him, do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Bring me in before the king, and I will show the king the interpretation. Then Arioch brought in Daniel before the king in haste and said thus to him, I have found among the exiles from Judah a man who will make known to the king the interpretation. And the king declared to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, are you able to make known to me the dream that I have seen and its interpretation? Daniel answered the king and said, no wise men, enchanters, magicians, or astrologers can show to the king the mystery that the king has asked. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. Your dream and the visions of your head as you lay in bed are these. To you, O king, as you lay, listen, that's all I really need to read. We weren't going to go into the dream. So Daniel doesn't take credit, does he? No, he says, I can't do it. None of the wise men can do it, but my God revealed it to me. And so he told Nebuchadnezzar the dream and its interpretation. And okay, and then jump down to Daniel 48 and chapter 2, 48 and 49, and we'll see how Daniel was rewarded.
He was put in a high position and lavished many gifts on him. He made him ruler over the entire province of Babylon and placed him in charge of all its wise men. Moreover, at Daniel's request, the king appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego administrators over the province of Babylon, while Daniel himself remained at the royal court.
Okay, so he's going to remain there. He has high honors he's thought of. And Daniel says, what about my friends too? And they were placed over different affairs in the city of Babylon. So here they are, staying focused on God in the midst of lots of evil, idol worship, and lots of hard situations, especially when they were going to be killed. Daniel says, wait a minute, I think I can do this because of my God. Can we say that today? I think I can do this because of my God. We need to, don't we? We need to, absolutely we need to. That's why I think this is such a timely and relevant lesson to think of, because who knows what we're going to be faced with in the future? Who knows? Only God. But we have to be ready to remain faithful. Okay, moving on. Chapter 3. How are we doing on time? Chapter 3, 1 through 7.
I don't mind.
Okay.
1 through 7.
Chapter 3.
Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold whose height was 60 cubits and its width 6 cubits. He set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon, and King Nebuchadnezzar sent word to gather together the satraps and the administrators, the governors and the counselors and the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all of the officials of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image which King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. So the satraps, the administrators, and the governors, and the counselors, and the treasurers, and the judges, and the magistrates, and all of the officials of the provinces gathered together for the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then a herald cried aloud, "To you it is a command, O people, nations, and languages, that at the time you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the harp, the lyre, and the psaltery, in symphony with all kinds of music, you shall fall down and you shall worship the gold image that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast immediately into the midst of the burning fiery furnace." So at that time, when all of the people heard the sound of the horn, the flute, the harp, and the lyre, in symphony with all kinds of music, all of the people, nations, and languages fell down and they worshiped the gold image which King Nebuchadnezzar had set up.
Okay. So Nebuchadnezzar has built himself an image made of gold. And he wants all the officials in his kingdom, when they hear the music, the wonderful music, they are to bow down and worship. And if they do not, go in there, fiery furnace, all right? Okay, so that's the setup for the next situation that actually it's just, Daniel's not involved in this one, it's his three friends that are being tested. So verses 8 through 15.
Then some of the Chaldeans came up to the king and began speaking against the people from Judah. They said, "King, may you live forever. King, you gave a command. You said that everyone who hears the sound of the horns, flutes, lyres, sambucas, harps, bagpipes, and all the other musical instruments must bow down and worship the gold idol." So Susie, what's that word? I probably pronounced it wrong.
Nope.
Oh, is it the Psaltery, P-S-A-L-T-E, what, I was like, yeah, Psaltery, I guess.
Okay, maybe my version has S-A-M-B-U-C-A-S.
I don't have that, that's interesting.
Huh.
Where was it?
S-A-M-B-U-C-A-S. It's in between the lyres and the harp.
Oh, mine says trijon, trijon, so I don't know what that is.
Mine says pipes. You didn't have
Pipes.
Some kind of musical instrument. that they have.
Right. Cindy, you should know your
I
musical
should know
instruments.
that was his song right here.
Okay, all right, so when they hear the music, okay.
And you also said that whoever does not bow down and worship the gold idol will be thrown into a very hot furnace. There are some Judeans who you made important officials in the province of Babylon that ignored your order, king. Their names are Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They don't worship your gods, and they didn't bow down to worship the gold idol you set up. Nebuchadnezzar became very angry. He called for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, so they were brought to him. And Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, is it true that you don't worship my gods? And is it true that you didn't bow down and worship the gold idol I have set up? Now, when you hear the sound of the horns, flutes, lyres, sambucas, harps, bagpipes, and all the other musical instruments, you must bow down and worship the gold idol. If you are ready to worship the idol I have made, that is good. But if you don't worship it, you will be thrown very quickly into the hot furnace. Then no God will be able to save you from my power."
Okay, a couple more verses.
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered the king, "Nebuchadnezzar, we don't need to explain these things to you. If you throw us into the hot furnace, the God we serve can save us. And if he wants to, he can save us from your power. But even if God does not save us, we want you to know, king, that we refuse to serve your gods. We will not worship the gold idol you have set up."
Okay, so you would see a little jealousy going on here, a little tattletelling going on here. Yeah, there's someone that didn't bow down and worship your golden image. We'll tell you who they are. Right?
They missed Daniel.
Yeah, they did.
I'm sure Daniel didn't worship the image either.
Well, I'm pretty sure he didn't, but I think at this time, I guess Daniel was serving the king in a different capacity than the three of them because they were with their co-workers, I guess. Anyway, so they said, "We know."
The spies.
Yeah, they were the spies. us. Okay, so they told them that these three have not bowed down and worshiped the image that you have set up. And they don't worship any of the idols. And so King was furious, but he was ready to go, okay, here's your chance. You get another chance. When you hear the music, if you bow down, it'll all be good, right? But what was their response to that?
They're not going to.
We're not going to. Can't do it.
I love one of the themes that, and it's not really a theme, but there are songs, you know, like on Facebook or whatever, which kind of have this same anthem. But they say, our God can, and even if he doesn't,
Right.
you know, I think that's a Mercy Me song. If you listen to Mercy Me,
Yeah.
he can, but even if he doesn't, we still believe he is the God.
Right.
He is the one and the only, and they knew something better was yet to come, even off of this earth.
Right.
And
That's something that we need to take from this lesson tonight. That's one of the major points, is that even if God doesn't deliver us from what we think should be maybe delivered from, we still need to be ready to be faithful, no matter. And that's what they were ready to do. So they were ready to face the fiery furnace. If God could deliver them, he would. If he couldn't, that's okay too. He's still our God. And that's an attitude that's hard to maintain every single day, every single minute, and everything that we face, isn't it? Sometimes Satan gets a hold of our thoughts and keeps us from being that dedicated, that faithful. But I think we need to be ready for those instances. But however they come in our life, whatever is thrown at us by Satan. Okay, so moving on. What happened next and what was the king's reaction? Starting at verse 19. Then Nebuchadnezzar was filled with fury, and the expression of his face was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And he ordered the furnace heated 7 times more than it was usually heated. And he ordered some of the mighty men of his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and to cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their cloaks, their tunics, and their hats, and their other garments. And they were thrown into the burning fiery furnace. That's hard to say. Because the king's order was urgent and the furnace overheated, the flame of the fire killed those men who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell bound into the burning fiery furnace. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished and rose up in haste, and he declared to his counselors, "Did we not cast 3 men bound into the fire?" They answered and said to the king, "True, O king." He answers and said, "But I see 4 men unbound, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the appearance of the 4th is like a son of the gods." Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the door of the burning fiery furnace, and he declared, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out and come here." Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out from the fire, and the satraps, the prefects, the governors, the king's counselors gathered together and saw that the fire had not had any power over the bodies of those men. The hair of their heads was not singed, their cloaks were not harmed, and no smell of fire had come upon them. Nebuchadnezzar answered and said, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted in him and set aside the king's command and yielded up their bodies rather than serve and worship any god except their own God. Therefore, I make a decree. Any people, nation, or language that speaks anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be torn limb from limb, and their houses laid in ruins, for there is no other God who is able to rescue in this way." Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. Wow.
What a turnabout. Huh?
Yes. Who would have thought that 3 men, young boys from Judah, could change the king's mind
I know.
with the help of God,
Yeah.
right? And
That'd be pretty impressive.
their faithfulness, they
To
were
look at them,
ready
Yeah,
to
look in
give,
there and see.
I know, that's pretty amazing, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
And what happened to the people the guards that threw them in?
They died from
They
it.
died.
Yeah, they were overcome. An amazing event to witness, I'm sure. So the king instantly was ready to promote the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
Which is interesting. I wonder how much time passed before then Daniel was thrown into the lions that, like, he doesn't remember, or is that a different case?
It's a different king.
Okay, okay.
And that's why I said that we're gonna do several, he's gonna serve several kings, because this was Nebuchadnezzar, and when we're gonna see that it was under Darius
Okay.
that Daniel was thrown in the lion's den.
So do you think King Nebuchadnezzar felt that way his whole life, until he died?
Well, you notice that he didn't say, we're gonna worship the God. He said,
You just can't say
do
anything
not
negative.
say
Yeah.
anything against the God of,
Wasn't he though the one that ends up
that was
7 years of acting like a animal?
that was another Nebuchadnezzar.
Oh, that was a different. one.
Yeah, there was more than one.
Okay, I was like,
So it's
thinking,
kind of
so he turned
confusing.
around.
Yeah.
Okay, so that wasn't him.
I don't, it's my understanding that it's not,
Okay.
so, but yeah. Kind of some amazing stories here in the
Uh-huh.
first part of Daniel. Amazing stories of faithfulness and trust in spite of being surrounded by an evil nation. And they were in the king's service. That just amazes me that they served him, yet they worshiped God. Sounds hard to do, doesn't it? We may be set in some positions like that as we go through the next years of our government. I don't know. I don't know what is in store for us. Only God knows, right? But we need to be ready, and that's what I wanted us to understand by reading this. We need to be ready to remain faithful because we know the promises of God.
So I've been reading a book
Uh-huh.
Henry's son gave me, and it's about the lies people tell, and that there's this group, and I forget, Antifa or something like that. Anyway, there's this group, and they're targeting, real conservative people, and they're targeting Christians in general,
Mhm.
just because they, with violence and bullying and burning businesses down and targeting people that don't agree with them. They're way on the far left, and they think, and they think anybody on the right or conservatives should, not. Basically, they go beyond freedom of speech and into violence against people.
And we've seen that. We've seen that this summer in Seattle. If you pay attention to
Seattle and Portland, Oregon, both had big things with this group.
Minnesota too, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway. Kind of scary because it is close to home.
It is scary. It is scary to watch the United States turn against Christians. Basically, they're turning against Christians.
Well, and they're doing it in the education system too. So that's why I wanted us to realize
There's a lot of propaganda going on.
what they indoctrinate. They wanted to indoctrinate the ones they brought from Judah into their culture, change their names, try to erase their heritage, but yet the four of them are remaining faithful, and we're probably going to run out of time. But
And this group has news media on their side, and the news media won't report the violence
right,
and the things that they do. Instead, they're saying they're peaceful and they're, so they're reporting it different than it really is.
peaceful protests. Yeah,
And it isn't a peaceful protest at all.
no, not when you burn someone's business down
Or when you
deliberately
kill people
or attack the police stations.
and kill police.
Yeah, it's scary. So chapter 5 talks about the writing on the wall. And that was I think that was a different Nebuchadnezzar. And then chapter 6, y'all go ahead and we're gonna run out of time here. We got about 5 more minutes, but chapter 6 is about Daniel and the lion's den. And he's the only one that is targeted with this incident. So real quickly, let's read Daniel 6, 1-9.
Darius thought it would be a good idea to choose 120 satraps to rule throughout his kingdom. He chose 3 men to rule over the 120 satraps. Daniel was one of the 3 supervisors. The king put these men in this position to keep anyone from cheating him. Daniel proved himself to be a better supervisor than any of the others. He did this by his good character and great ability. The king was so impressed with Daniel that he planned to make him ruler over the whole kingdom. But when the other supervisors and the satraps heard about this, they were very jealous. They tried to find reasons to accuse Daniel, so they watched what Daniel did as he went about doing the business of the government. But they could not find anything wrong with him, so they could not accuse him of doing anything wrong. Daniel was a man people could trust. He did not cheat the king, and he worked very hard. Finally, they said, "We will never find any reason to accuse Daniel of doing something wrong. So we must find something to complain about that is connected to the law of his God." So the 2 supervisors and the satraps went as a group to the king. They said, "King Darius, live forever. The supervisors, prefects, satraps, advisors, and governors have all agreed on something. We think that the king should make this law and that everyone must obey it. For the next 30 days, whoever prays to any god or man, except you, king, will be thrown into the lion's den. Now, king, make the law and sign the paper it is written on, so that it cannot be changed, because the laws of the Medes and Persians cannot be canceled or changed." So King Darius made the law and signed it.
Okay, here we see how Daniel is exceeded because of his integrity, even in his official business with the king, and that he did not cheat in any way. And his co-workers wanted to find something against him, and they couldn't find anything, so they set up a trap because they're so jealous of him and his abilities. That no one could pray to their God except for praying to Darius. So different king now. So Daniel survived some kings, hasn't he? And this is when Daniel is going to be in the lion's den. 10-13, when Daniel knew that the document had been signed, he went to his house where he had windows in his upper chamber open toward Jerusalem. He got down on his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his God, as he had done previously. Then these men came by agreement and found Daniel making petition and plea before his God. Then they came near and said before the king concerning the injunction, "O king, did you not sign an injunction that everyone who makes petition to you, to any god or man within 30 days except to you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions?" And the king answered and said, "The thing stands fast and according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which it cannot be revoked." Then they answered and said before the king, Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, they never forget where it came from, did they?
No.
Let's see, I lost my place. "O king, and the injunction you have signed, but makes his petitions 3 times a day." So here they are, tattletelling again, telling on Daniel that he prayed to God 3 times a day, and he's always done that. And when the king heard this, he was distressed. I think he knew at that point
That was true.
that it was a trap, and he couldn't do anything about it.
Because these people knew that Daniel prayed 3 times a day. I'm sure other people knew Daniel prayed 3 times a day. Maybe even the king knew.
Oh, yeah, probably so.
But he probably just didn't think about it when he was doing the other.
When he was signing the.
Decided to make it free.
Yeah. I just thought it was a good idea. Pay homage
Now
to
he'll
me.
look bad if he doesn't follow through and throw him in the lion's den.
Yeah. Okay, so on the back, y'all know the rest of the story. Daniel and the lion's den, the rest of it, but it's interesting what the king did. He fasted and did not sleep all night while Daniel was in the lion's den. Because he hoped that Daniel's God would save him, and he did. And at the break of day, he went straight to the den and said, "Oh, Daniel, did your God save you?" And Daniel, yeah, he did. And the people, the ones who set up the trap, not only they were thrown into the lion's den, but their families were thrown with them. So that was interesting. Then I listed, I just said, we're in a time where it may be hard and we may be faced with difficult times. And I just encourage you to remain faithful. And I listed some scriptures there. There's so many that can give you encouragement. But just remember that there were many of God's people in the Bible who faced hard times and remained faithful, and God was with them. Even if he didn't answer the way that they thought they might, he was with them. So thank y'all for being here tonight. It's good to see everybody.